Welcome back to this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. Today I'm joined by Cody Lowry, one of my oldest friends and a new author.
Schmooze What They Should Teach at Harvard Business School. And today we're going to schmooze with your audience.
Well, Cody, thanks for coming in. Your book has been out for just about a year now, right?
Actually, it came out July 21st, right in the middle of COVID 20. So, it was at a period when, there was little foot traffic in the bookstores, and but it did well on Amazon and what have you. But now it's really opening up, and I'm going to be in Las Vegas next week, and Scottsdale the following week, down in Miami, and
so it's taking off.
It really is taking off. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because what you just described is adversity.
Yeah, adversity.
Your book is coming out right in the middle of a time where we're all experiencing a lot of adversity, and I read your book. And I thought it had some great advice about how to deal with adversity.
Well, Cords, that's something that I learned at an early age. And I've got you always hear of the rags to riches story. Well, my story is a riches to rags. My mom was the daughter of Frank Cody in Detroit. She was raised with a gold spoon in her mouth, at least privileged. She was very privileged. Her father was the first president of Wayne State University. There's a high school named after him, Frank Cody High School. He was superintendent of schools in Detroit for 30 years. I mean, when she was growing up, the kids that she hung out with were automotive names, the Fords, the Fishers, and she did make her debutante, and she went to finishing school, and she did all those wonderful things. And then her and my father, Emory, they met. They were both camp counselors up at a camp in northern Michigan called Camp Chicopee, which is still there today. And they fell in love, and
it's like Dirty Dancing.
Yeah, there you go. And so they got married, and it just early on they had some issues. They finally moved to Florida, and then we really had issues. They got very fond of the bottle and would drink themselves into a frenzy and have, loud discussions every night that were really kind of ugly. And I can tell you that within a 7-year period, a 7-mile radius, we moved 32 times. That's adversity as a little kid. I can remember coming home from school with my little brother, and we didn't live there anymore. We actually lived in 2 places twice. And, that was not very sustainable. So my mom and dad decided to separate. And I didn't realize that when he separated, that'd be the last time I'd see him before he came back in a coffin. But and I was 10 or 11, and, I had other brothers and sisters. And one thing about my mom that I really admire, Cords, is she imbued in all of us this feeling that, maybe we don't have anything now. And she'd have a martini or two, and she'd look across the room. She'd say, "But you kids have blue blood in your veins, and you can hang with anybody, and you're going to go to Wayne State on a scholarship," which was BS, But she, it sounded good at the time. But she really did make all of us feel like we were, as good as anybody else, and we surely didn't belong in the socioeconomic environment that we were in at the time. And so as a result of that, I mean, we all worked at an early age, and I sold newspapers.
And so, one of my favorite sayings is, tough times make strong men, and strong men make good times.
Yeah. So
was this book, is it full of lessons that came out of just those early years of you sharpening your skills into something like more because of what you went through as a child?
Well, probably some of the things that I've overcome or I've succeeded in are the result of an upbringing like I just shared with you. But real quickly, schmooze, the sizzle and schmooze is setting up a meeting with the President of the United States in 1 week, getting a baseball signed by the Pope, carrying the torch in the Olympic torch relay, being the recipient of a Super Bowl ring from one of NFL's Hall of Fame coaches, auditioning for Saturday Night Live within a 48-hour notice. That's the sizzle, and they're all in the book, and they're great stories. And but schmooze is something more than the connotative definition that most people
Yiddish,
associate.
right?
Well, it's a Yiddish word that kind of means, schmoozing and kind of chatting, to chat idly in a friendly or persuasive manner to gain favor, And what I've done is I've redefined the word schmooze. And first and foremost, Cord, it's about being genuine. It's about a winning smile. It's about making a great first impression. It's about being kind to all, regardless of class. From a business standpoint, it's about building relationships that last. As you know, I have clients that I've had for over 30 years.
Right.
And they're hard to shake. But it's about it's about having fun. Nobody's guaranteed tomorrow, so I tell them to have fun. And I was kind of born with a lampshade on my head, as you know, and so it's kind of easy for me. But I encourage people to get their chin out of their chest and have fun. But today we live in the most connected society in the history of the world, and yet we're more disconnected than ever before. And so in a nutshell, it's about getting away from the clicks and likes that give you relevancy, and really hearkening back to the day when we looked people in the eye,
right.
We greeted them with a smile, and our word was our bond.
And you talked about your background. You went through a tremendous amount of adversity, and you've been successful by anyone's standard in life. I would hope even your mom's standards of success, right? Talking about coming from blue blood. I really appreciate a lot of what you talk about in the book because it's those human fundamentals, right? It's those basic human connections of how to do it in a way. In some of the things, it's hard to believe some of the things that you've done. Getting a baseball signed by the Pope.
Yeah,
who would have even thought of something like that?
Yeah, and when you do think of it, people kind of laugh at you. They go, and I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, it's been good for me to be somewhat naive as I meander through, life's paths and different avenues, because I'll come up with an idea. Let's get a baseball signed by the Pope. Let's meet with the president.
Why not?
Oh, yeah,
right.
Yeah, why not? And I don't think about it not happening. And I think the reason also that a lot of these crazy things that I've done work is because most people would not even think about doing that. Getting a meeting with the president in 1 week? Don't think so.
Yeah, that's just crazy. So tell us a couple of your stories. So you actually got a meeting with Jimmy Carter?
Jimmy Carter. His name was Jimmy Carter. My name is Jimmy Carter. Always tell the truth. If I ever tell a lie, I grow another tooth. And if we get to the, have enough time, we'll get to the Saturday Night Live story, and that's fun.
Well, did you call his assistant and in that voice and ask to just get you something?
No, I didn't. It's so I was general sales manager for a large Chevrolet dealership here in the Tampa Bay area, Abraham Chevrolet, and
I'd like your pen reel.
Oh yeah, am I making noise with that?
Yeah,
he's scolding me, President was coming into town, and not too far from here, right? Is it King High right over here? I don't know.
There's Jefferson.
Okay, Jefferson. And that's where the president was coming, and to speak to a large group of people. And Mr. Abraham, who was a strong, right-wing conservative, and the last person that you would think that would ever, spend about $25,000 running full-page ads and three of Florida's largest newspapers in support of President Carter. But he liked an article that Walter Annenberg wrote. And you might remember Walter Annenberg, Reader's Digest, philanthropist, what have you. And the article was A Summer of Discontent. And the thrust of the article is that, inflation's at 14%, and we've got hostages, and all these things are going on, but the bottom line is he's the only president we got, and we got to kind of stick behind him. And it was a real nice article. So we took the article and we put it on, presented it on boards and what have you. And I was in a meeting, and I said, I got a great idea, and I brought out the boards, and the president could be in town next week. Let's set up a meeting and see what we can do. Well, they laughed. They thought that was really funny, But this is where the schmooze comes in. Finally, Mr. Abraham says, well, if you can pull that off. And I thought it would be good to get some recognition.
So the president was scheduled to be in town?
He was, yeah.
All right. And so your goal is to somehow get him to swing by.
Not swing by. We would swing by,
Oh, okay, yeah.
The president doesn't swing by. You swing by to see him, right? So, finally they said, well, go ahead, see if you can do it. So I first thing I did is I called Jody Powell's office. People may not remember his name, but he was very, very close to the president. And I called him, and I got turned down. And then I went to this office, and I went to another office. And finally, somebody sent me to a scheduling office, and kind of educated me. Every president's got a scheduling office, and they have somebody in charge of the president's daily schedule every single minute. And so I called the office. I got a gentleman on the phone, and I told him what I want to do. The president was coming into town. I told him about Walter Annenberg, and that we have these boards set up, and we'd like to present the president with a plaque of recognition. And he was just taken aback by that. He said, do you know how many people want to meet with the President of the United States?
Yeah.
And now you want to do it in less than 7 days? And I said, well, that's probably true. I said, but you could count on one finger how many people just spent, $20-some thousand running full page in 3 or 4
that was a lot of money.
Newspaper. Oh, a lot of money. In a state that's going to be critical to them in the upcoming election. And now this guy doesn't know who I am, right? And he says,
but you've got his attention.
I got his attention. And so he said, I'll call you in the morning. And he did. And he said, Quiche LeGrand is in town. She's in charge of the president's schedule. They're staying at the Marriott, and she knows that you're going to be calling. And so I did. I called her. She said, well, come over. I really don't understand what you're doing. So we get there, and they've got 3 rooms together. And I was pretty impressed. I was always into politics, and they're on the phone talking to this person, that person. So I met with Quiche, and I explained the whole story. And, we'd like to, meet with the president and with these ads. And she said, I got to check with one other person. And I said, okay. And she said, I'll give you a call tomorrow. Well, I knew there was only one other person she could check with, and that was the big guy himself, right? Jimmy Carter. I left the hotel. I went to Alessi Bakery, which is right around here for those
Tampa
listening.
Institution.
Yeah, right? Iconic bakery. And I got 2 cheesecakes, and I had them sent to a room with the rooms with a note. Quiche, thank you very much. I appreciate you meeting with me today, and regardless of what happens, you were very gracious, and again, thank you. So now she calls the next morning, right? And they say, hey, the White House is on the phone. So I pick up the phone, and she said, well, Cody, she said, we've set up a time for you to, or Mr. Abraham to meet with the president. And so she was going on, and she was talking about all the security information she needed from him, and I interrupted her. I said, Quiche, is there any way that I might be able to go with Mr. Abraham? And she said, no, that's not going to be possible. And then she just, didn't miss a beat. She would just say, okay, we got to do this, that, and the other. And so when she was done, I said, well, thank you so much. And just one more question, the old college try. I said, is there any way I could go with Mr. Abraham? Well, there was dead silence. I thought she was upset with me, right? And she said, Cody, I'll handle it. Thanks for the cheesecake. So that's all part of the schmooze, And it was great meeting the president. We didn't have it at the high school. It was actually over at the airport, and we met Lillian Carter, and it was quite an ordeal. But those kinds of things work, I think, because most people don't do it, and I think it's okay to be a little naive.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I certainly admire just how in the time I've known you. I mean, you are one of my oldest friends, but relatively speaking, it's only a decade or so, less than a decade, right, that we've known each other, and it is very cool to see the kinds of things that you can actually get done. And it's like you have this certain style. I mean, you've got one of the biggest personalities of anybody I know, and somehow you're able to use that personality to make someone laugh, make someone smile, and you get a lot done.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, for your people out there that are starting in business, or maybe they're already in business, there's a chapter that I like, and it's about building relationships, and I talk about the secret sauce, and it's build the relationship, get the client to trust you, and then at least endeavor to never let them down. There's some clients that you're never going to keep happy, but with that said, to build the relationship, I mean, it's not something you sit down and you've got this big blueprint. Okay, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. That relationship starts in the first 30 seconds that you meet somebody. They're already making a value judgment. And I learned that real early in life. Whenever I went to see a CEO, or maybe it was an automobile dealer, when I went into that meeting Cords, I knew how many kids they had. I knew what college, if he went to college, what college he went to. I knew the charities that he was involved with. I knew what clubs in town he was associated with. I knew maybe who some of his friends were, so I could draw a common denominator with him. And so when I would go in and talk to a new prospective client, I knew all that stuff, and I would throw that into the narrative and make it part of the conversation. And it's amazing what that does. And then if you really want to make your client happy, or prospective client, or whoever it is, ask them, sit back and look at them and say, Cords, how'd you get started in this business? Oh my God. Well, sit back and hope you brought lunch, because they love telling their stories, and they're great stories. But I use that as a tactic to, really get on a common ground and really, have an advantage over my competitors. And I'll tell you, this is a real good story. I had my ad agency, and we were big in automotive, and we had Chevrolet associations. We had about 5 or 6 Chevrolet associations. And I got a call from a Chevy dealer that was in one of my associations from North Carolina, and we were talking. He says, hey, we're all meeting at the Grove Park Inn. He said, next Tuesday or something. He says, why don't you come on up? And I said, well, okay. So, I thought it was an opportunity to meet 10 other Toyota dealers, and I'd have them all to myself, right? And try to build relationships, maybe for future business down the road. So I get there. It's a beautiful place. I don't know if you've been there, but the dealers were having an early cocktail hour, and then they're having dinner. And, I'm getting to know all of these dealers, and I mean, really get to know them. And I had been in automotive for a while, so we did know a lot of the same people, but I really got to know them, and as good as you could know somebody in an hour and a half. But I'm at dinner, and one of the dealers looks across the table, and he said, so who did you bring? And I said, who did I bring? He said, yeah, for tomorrow. Well, Cords, they were having a presentation for the account, okay? And you being in this business, you can only imagine how I felt. And I just couldn't believe it.
Take another one.
Yeah.
Right.
And I didn't have anybody with me, and I didn't let on during the evening how uncomfortable I was. But when I got up to my room, I really thought, you know what, I got to just get out of this thing.
I mean, literally, like you said before you told this story, it's literally worth millions of dollars.
Millions and millions.
This is multi-millions of dollars.
This is
account,
the first account that was ever taken away from Saatchi & Saatchi, which is a multi-billion-dollar agency, right? But in any event, I got up to my room and I was really thinking about throwing in the towel, and I thought, you know what? You're here. What the hell? You met the guys. They like you. And, I didn't have any creative for them, but I knew what our creative strategy was. I didn't have any media for them, but I knew what our media strategy was. Fortunately for me, I had just put together a sizzle reel, in advertising, we have a sizzle reel, and I knew mine was as good as anybody that was going to come and pitch. And so, you know what? I decided I'm going to do this. So it was really interesting. You should have been a fly on the wall, because there's 3 other agencies that I'm pitching against, and they've got a minimum of 4 people, maybe 5. They've got, the girls and the storyboards and the media people and the parting gifts for the dealers, and all those kinds of things. And in advertising, and I don't know if your viewers know this, I know you know this, you either want to be first or you want to be last. And I was last, and that was fine. But it gave me an opportunity to meet some of the other agencies, and they were very dismissive of it. What's this guy? He's by himself,
right.
How's he going to get this account? So I was last. I went in into the room, and when I did, it was all, Cody, how you doing, man? Hey, it was fun last night. Boom, boom, boom. And, I'm among my friends. They know me. I know them, right? I've got a big advantage over the competition. So I feel pretty good. I get up there, and they've given me 35 minutes, and I pitch my heart out, and they applaud, and I leave the room. And one thing about dealers, unlike a lot of different companies that you might be involved with, they make decisions really quick.
Right, they have to.
Yeah. So I guess it was not even an hour, and out comes an Italian guy, Joe Bertolami. Cody, want to see you. But I don't know. Maybe this is it for me. Maybe they're going to, I'm done, right? But anyway, I go into the room, and they all stand up and give me a standing ovation. And guess what? I picked up that account, and I had it for 10 years until, the whole process went in a different direction. Toyota did. But I got that account. Did I have better media? No, because I didn't really have any. I had a media strategy. Creative, I had nothing except to kind of give them my stump speech on creative and how I felt about the tone of commercials. And it was my ability to create relationships very, very quickly that got me an account. Build the relationship, get the customer to trust you, never let them down.
That was one of my favorite chapters in your book.
Oh, it was? Good.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is how challenging car dealers can be as clients. Especially when you don't have a strong relationship with them, because they'll test you. Just like when you go and buy a car, it's in their DNA to win at every negotiation. And so it can be really tough. So I'm going to try to take some of your advice. So tell me about when you decided to write your book.
So I was heading up an automotive advertising retail division up in Birmingham, and I had about 2 more years that I was going to spend with this company. And I kind of looking back, and I said, "This is all there is," and and you and I have been friends, as you mentioned, for many years, and you knew that I'd been talking about maybe writing a book, and so I just started writing it. I've got insomnia, so I always wake up around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I know you've gotten some early texts from me, and so I started writing the book. And I must tell you, writing a book is not as casual as you think it is on the front end. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and because I was working full time and commuting from Birmingham to Tampa, my home, it was hard for me to really find the quality time other than, in the morning to actually work on the book. So it took me about 2 years to do it. And I think I did it right. And, I'm glad that I went through the the process of getting someone to write with credibility the foreword to the book. And as you know, we got Dr. Nito Quibane, who is president of High Point University and one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. It's really important that you get people of stature or prominence to read the book, and that's why I've got Alan Dershowitz and Hal Steinbrenner and Tim Gannon, one of the co-founders of Outback, Barney Barnett, vice chairman of Public Supermarkets. And, I knew when they read the book that more than likely they would endorse it. It was a little difficult because Bronson, I went after him and I couldn't even get through the front door, and time was a wasting. But so I think I did the right things. I went through a national publisher, Simon and Schuster, does the distribution, and at the time you don't know what you don't know, and I think if I was to go down this avenue again, I might self-publish for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is nobody's going to promote this book more than I am.
Right, you're the number one salesman.
Yeah, and the publishers, they had, everybody had issues with COVID. My publisher, two of his PR people, they got, they got let go, and the one that I had was, I knew more about PR than she did. But in any event, so
but here we are. You're speaking at NADA, which is the National Automotive
Dealers Association.
Right, it's the biggest event of all year long for car dealers.
Right,
you're speaking with one of the most prominent insurance companies there.
Right.
It's been a success. Haven't you been a bestseller on Amazon?
Yep. And it's good because one of the in the last chapter I talk about 10 things, the importance of schmooze, and 10 things that you ought to consider. And one of them is pay a compliment. One of is appreciate. One of them is stay relevant. And today there's so many people that are thinking about retiring and are close to retiring, but I got to tell you, of course, they got a lot of juice in them, and it's different today than when they were growing up and watching their parents. There's better health. They've taken better care of themselves, and I know when I was growing up, I thought 50 was old. I thought 60 was, 70. Oh my God, 80. I almost never saw, somebody in their 80s, and if I did, they had a walker and oatmeal drooling down their chin. But it's not like that today, And so I encourage people to, especially as they're thinking about moving into retirement, to stay relevant, to be in the game. And I gave this advice to a billionaire friend of mine who I think you know, and we were at his home in Kiowa and on the ocean and having a glass of scotch with him. And he said, Cody, you said something last year, and I thought it really made a lot of sense. It's hit home with me, and I'm going to take your advice. At the time, he wasn't a billionaire. He was only making $50 million a year, and then he sold his company and became a billionaire. But in any event, I forgot whatever it was that I shared with him. But I said, well, what was that, Damon? I asked you when you were going to retire, and you said that you weren't going to retire, that you were going to stay in the game, you were going to die with your boots on, and that you wanted to stay relevant. That particular week before I was up there with him, I was in Austin, Texas with the head of Microsoft marketing. And, you could only look at your stock so much, you could only play golf so much, and I want to be in the game. I have 11 grandkids and love them to death, and I spend time with them. But I want to keep charging.
I think you have a lot of fun doing this too.
I absolutely do. Absolutely.
So now that you're looking back on this process of writing your book and promoting your book, you're successful at it. Are there any chapters that, if you would have written the book today, that would be in the book?
I don't think so. And it's funny because, people that know me, if you get one of the big things that happened in my life is when I came up with this TV character called Fabulous Filbert. Fabulous Filbert here, friends, for National Auto Sale. And it was big, and we had our own following at the universities, and he was a satirical character. And people say, well, why isn't Filbert in your book? Because Filbert didn't fit. It was, it was just another little tiny subchapter that, kind of patted Cody on the back for his talent. And really, Schmooze is all about lessons in life. It's about being a contrarian. It's about, developing a little chutzpah, and about schmoozing from the podium, about being a contrarian. I mean, I really believe that one of my biggest reasons for succeeding like I have is that I'm a contrarian, and I can sit in a meeting and the smartest guy in the room might be sharing his view on whatever, and I'm going, he's wrong, and I can't sit there much longer, and I basically will speak up and try to move people to my side of the table, if you will. And so I think it's good to be a contrarian. So many people are scared of other people. They're scared of their boss. And I tell people in the book, I don't care who stoops from what pedestal, how many zeros they have behind their name. We are all more alike than we are different. And quite frankly, we have it better than 99.9% of all the people that have ever lived on the face of this earth.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that I really enjoyed reading your book, and I appreciate you coming here today to talk to us. I think it's a great book to, I'll endorse your book. I think it's a great book to give somebody who just needs some guidance and some rules for being successful, and some, tools and rules for being successful.
Yeah.
And like I said, you've been more successful than most, and really appreciate you talking to us about your
Thank you,
books.
Cords. And then I wanted to ask you, where do I pick up my honorarium? I know it's around here someplace, right? Nice little check, little envelope for me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cords.
You're welcome, Cody. I appreciate it. So before we go, where can people pick up the book? Where can they follow you? Where can they see what you're up to? Hire you to speak at their event?
Yep. Well, you can go to mrschmooze.com, and then my email. And I'm getting a lot of people that are sending me emails about, telling me about schmoozers in their life and stories and some really interesting info that I might use on my next book, which it's going to be Schmoozers We Love. Unfortunately, I can't put you in the book, Cords, for obvious reasons. But no.
Yeah.
So and they can go to they can obviously go to Amazon and go to Barnes and Noble. It looks like Amazon is the best place. And they go to mrschmooze.com, and you'll see a lot of videos. And I'd love to hear from your audience.
That's great. Well, we'll follow you there. And you guys can follow us anywhere where podcasts are found, on thelawofrelevancy.com, on the Bake More Pie social feed, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again for joining us.